So today's lesson 2 of server-side scripting. So last week we kind of got started with ASP.NET. We talked about a little bit what it was, what tools we were going to use. We got set up. So one thing we didn't do, if memory serves, which I'd actually like to start with today, is we built this application. We set up our music store application last week. We got it running in our local server. One thing I don't think we did was actually put this on GitHub, which is something we should be doing. Normally I'll do it at the end of class, but I'm going to start today. We want to take what we did last week, open up that solution, and look at how do we get it on GitHub. There's a few different ways we can do it, but it's something, obviously, all your work in this class has to get posted on GitHub. I'll review your code there. You won't upload it to Blackboard. And there's some tools in Visual Studio, which some of you may have used before and some of you haven't. So I'll show you both the Visual Studio tools as well as command line tools, and you free to use whichever one you want. The Visual Studio tools are easier to use. They also, though, if you have any problem with Git, there's no way to fix the problem. So the command line is more flexible and we have more freedom working with the command line. So first thing I'm going to do is open up my project from last week. So I'll open up last Friday's project. That's not last Friday's project. I may as well open the proper one. Here it is. So here's our project last week. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to GitHub and create a new repository. I'll make my repository public so everybody has access to it. Up to you whether you want yours to be public or private. For most of your assignments, those repositories will need to be private. You don't have to pay for private repositories. Does anybody not have the ability to get free private repositories? If not, let me know and I will let you know how to modify your GitHub account so that you can get private repositories for free. So I'm going to make a new repository here. Long name, because I've got 3 sections of this class. You could just call it COMP2084 Music Store. Call it NBC Music Store. Call it whatever you like. Just don't put spaces in the name. You can put in a description. So I'm going to leave mine as public. For now, we'll leave the Readme file out. We'll generate a Readme file after. We'll talk about what this is and we'll generate it. So I'm just going to click create. So basically all you need is a name and click create. You don't have to change anything else here. So now it gives me some commands. I'm actually going to run these from the command line first. But not yet. Just going to go look at our directory for a minute. So here's our solution folder where we see 5 items. There's this hidden Visual Studio folder. This is our web project with our models use controllers. This is our unit test project we set up last week that we said we're not going to use for a while. Our solution file, that's just basically an XML document that kind of links the projects together. And then we have packages. So packages is the vast majority of the code here. It's 112 megabytes is the packages. One of the things we don't want to do when we're archiving and using Git with Visual Studio is we don't want to include the packages. And every time we commit, we don't want to be uploading and downloading all of those support libraries. So we're going to need a Git Ignore file for this. Okay? That will ignore the packages as well as a whole bunch of other support files that there's no need for us to include on our GitHub repositories. So I don't want to put this on Git yet. We need to deal with the Git Ignore to exclude our packages. So there is a standard Git Ignore file for Visual Studio projects. I've put a copy of it up on Blackboard for you. Okay, so let's go and grab that file. It's in weekly learning and under, my mouse is dying, under tools and resources, you scroll down near the bottom, here's a Git Ignore file. Now you can't just download and save the file as it is, because by default, Windows won't let you create a file with the name .git ignore. So there's a bit of a quick hack to this. So rather than right-clicking and downloading it, if you try to open it, if you say you want to open it with Notepad, this is going to work. So just click the file, open with Notepad. And now we click on File and Save As. Now there's a few things we need to do here. The first thing is change this from a TXT extension. We have to choose all files. Otherwise, it's going to put a .txt extension on the end of it, and the Git Ignore doesn't work if it has a TXT extension. So choose all files and make sure the name is just .git ignore. Where do we have to put it? We have to put it in a specific place. We have to put it in the same folder we were just looking at in my Windows directory. So if you don't see your .sln file, you're not saving it in the right place. In my Monday class, a number of people saved their Git Ignore file inside of here, which is in the web project. So that works. It means they can upload their web project to GitHub, but it ignores the unit test project, which we also want to be included when because we're going to be working with the unit test project. So our .git ignore should go here. You should see those four folders plus our solution file. This is where we want the .git ignore file to get saved. It's like a hidden Visual Studio folder. We don't really have to touch it. It's just how Visual Studio tracks stuff. If you don't see it, it's because I have hidden file. It's a hidden folder, which is turned up, which is visible. I enabled my Windows to show hidden folders. So if you don't see that .vs, no problem. Okay. So you may just see 3 folders in your solution file rather than 4. As long as you're here, your file is .git ignore and save as type says all files, not txt. So let's just save it. And now if I look in my regular Windows Explorer window, you can see the .git ignore file is here. Right. Right. So yeah, and if you don't have extensions turned on, yeah, you see the file, but it says nothing. And the Windows will probably just say the type is text document. So now if I want to push my files to Git, it's going to ignore this packages folder, which is what we want. Now I'm going to upload this from my command line. So there's a couple ways I could do this. Right now, the way I need to do this is go to my Windows folder, copy this directory, then open my command line and do a cd command and paste that in. There's a shortcut that will save us time doing this. So here's one way. I grab that directory, open the command prompt, and run cd and paste. Now I could run my commands from here. If I run dir, you can see there's my Git Ignore and my solution. Everything's here. So I'm in the right place. There's an easier way to do this. We can install this little add-on to Visual Studio that will automatically open a command prompt in the right directory. So that's easier. Then I'm going to copy and paste that. Yep. Yeah, you can use that. There's lots of different ways. I'm just giving you some options. If that works for you, that's great. The other way you can do it in Visual Studio, I'll show you this little add-on that you may want to add. I've already installed it in my version of Visual Studio. If you want to add it, you can. So if you click on Tools, under Tools, the second option here is Extensions and Updates. If you click the Online section here and search for the word command line, there's an extension you can install called Open Command Line. This will allow us to right-click any folder here and open a command prompt in that directory. So we don't have to manually go and browse through it. So it just saves us a bit of time. So if you pick this, I've already installed it, which is why I have the green check. I think you'll see an install button down here. If you click on it, click install, it will install, and then you'll get a message along here in yellow saying the extension will be installed after you close your Visual Studio window. So you'll have to close Visual Studio, and then the installer, you'll see it down in your taskbar. You just click on the installer, it'll add the extension, then you have to reopen Visual Studio and open your project back up. So let it install. It doesn't take long. It's not a big extension. It should install relatively quickly. And then just reopen the application and open your project back up from the recent projects list. If you install that extension, it works like this. If I want to interact with GitHub now, I can right-click my solution, and it adds this option to the context menu, Open Command Line. And you can use PowerShell or a default command prompt. So now I just pick my default command prompt, and I'm automatically in my solution folder. So it's just a little faster than browsing to the folder in Windows, copying and pasting that path all the time. Right? Directory, I'm in the same place. So any of these methods will work. We're saving the Git Ignore file to where? To the root folder of your solution where the .sln file is. Should be a file in the folder of type Visual Studio Solution with a .sln extension. The Git Ignore file goes there. Right, see those two files in my list underneath the folders? If you don't see your Visual Studio Solution file with the .sln, then you're not in the right folder. So I'm going to initialize Git, add my files, make my first commit, connect it up to the repository I just created, and then push my files. Then we're going to make a Readme file, and we'll look at the alternative to using the command line, how we can make commits just in Visual Studio. It's actually a little bit simpler. But setting it up initially is probably easiest from the command line. So I have two command windows open. They're both in the same place. I don't really need both of them. So the first thing I'm going to do is initialize Git. Now Git will track this folder for any changes. Git init. I didn't type anything. I actually just I just right-clicked my solution and picked Open Command Line. Oh, sorry, I did type one command before. I typed dir, just a directory to show me what files were in that folder. It's not necessary. We just wanted to make sure I was in the right place. So if you type dir, you'll want to make sure you see your Git Ignore file. If you don't see Git Ignore, then we're not in the right place. So we initialize Git. Question? Yeah, I think Git Ignore. I know I'm in the right place, but when I put Git init, it's saying it's not recognized as an internal. Okay, once I had this problem this morning. Here is the fix. A bit of a pain, but it did work. I'm just seeing if the link is here for you. In that case, yeah, just go back to the tools and resources. You may just have to reinstall Git, Ali, from this link. It's just a free download. It installs quickly. You may just have to reinstall Git. So when Ali typed Git in it, she got Git is not a recognized command. If that happens, the second last link on tools and resources is a link straight to the Git page. You can just download and reinstall Git if necessary. 1 or 2 students had this problem this morning. They reinstalled Git and that solved their issue. So if you get Git is not a recognized command, just reinstall it. And it's the second last link on the bottom I've highlighted in blue. So now that I've initialized Git, I want to add all the files with git add dot. The dot just is a wildcard, all file names, all extensions. So git space add space dot. So Git's watching all these files now. Now we want to make a commit. So we want to take a snapshot of the code right now. Git space add space dot. I'm going to make my first commit. I think you're way ahead of a lot of people. Okay. How far back do we need to go? Yeah. Okay, I'll go through the Git Ignore again. Thank you, that's fine, you just have to let me know. I will go through the whole Git Ignore process again from the beginning. Okay? Try to do it with me, and if I lose you, let me know. Okay. So in your tools and resources, you're going to click, if you need the Git Ignore file, you're going to click this link. It should ask if you want to open it with Notepad. Okay. If you don't get this, that's fine. We can do, well, I'll show you 2 different ways. If you get this to open with Notepad, and I'll show you what to do if you don't get that prompt in a minute. In Notepad, you click File and Save As. We change the type to all and change the name to .gitignore. And we save that in the same folder where our Visual Studio Solution file is. That's the one file with the .sln extension. If you don't get prompted to open a Notepad, it's okay, there's still a way we can get it. So I'll just cancel this. In this case, there's a bit of a hack. You can save it. So when I go to save it, it gives me this name. It offers this name, gitignore.gitignore. For now, you can just call it gitignore.txt just to download it. And then we can open it up and rename it. So just save it as a text file if you need to, that's fine. Yeah, haven't been able to get it. Save it as a text file. You were able to save it as a text file? No. What happens when you right click and choose Save Link As? Okay, any ability to save the file? That's fine. So just call it .txt. Give it a text extension temporarily. As long as you save it with a text file, I'll show you what to do next. If you had to save it as a text file because you haven't been able to open it up yet, that's fine. We've got it as a text file. So now just open the text file in whatever program you use for TXT files. Notepad, whatever the default program is. I've got Sublime. So just open it with the name. And now we can click Save As, and now we should be able to rename it as .git ignore. If we just pick all files, we can call it .git ignore. Just open it up in your text editor, choose File Save As, the name is .git ignore, and all files won't assign an extension. Does that work for you? Okay, it doesn't work. So you had to reinstall Git, and now it works. So here are your options if you need to rename it. The file name is .git ignore, and on Save As Type, just choose all files. In whatever text editor you have, whatever your default text editor is for .txt files. All the commands we need are here. We're only going to change one thing. So in terms of the commands to run, you can see them here. GitHub tells you every time you create the new repository, it tells you what commands to execute. We don't need this first one. We do git init first to initialize Git. The only thing we changed was instead of readme, we replaced readme with a dot to add all the files instead of just one file. These other three commands, you could actually copy and paste into the command prompt if you want. We don't have to change anything. So commit takes an archive of the code, a snapshot of the code at the current point in time, and usually we put in a description of what we did in that version of the code. The remote at origin, that connects our local repository to this GitHub repository, and push is an upload. So this git init and git remote add, we only have to do that the very first time we set up the repository. We never have to do these things again. Init and remote add only happen once. From now on, every time we make a change, we just call add, commit, push. But these two, step 1 and step 4, have to happen. So I'm going to follow these commands. We've initialized, we've added the files. Now we need to make a commit. We need to take a snapshot of our project. We're replacing it with a dot. So where their instructions say readme, we're just putting in a dot. A dot is a wildcard character, meaning all file names, all file extensions. So add all the working files we've built, whether they're .js, .cs, whatever they are, add them. So now I'm going to do this commit part. So I'll say lesson 1 app setup. You can say whatever you want. In the message, it's a good idea to try to be descriptive as to what is in each version. So this takes a local copy of all the files, excluding the packages. So if I break something today, I now have an archive version I can go back to from last week. So I have a local copy, but these files haven't been uploaded yet. So to upload them, the easiest thing to do is actually just copy those two commands. Remote add, next to our local archive to GitHub, and push will upload the files. I'm just going to copy those two lines, right click, and paste. Yes. So here's the steps. Init, add, commit, -m, the message. Remote add, push. So this step is once only, and this step is also once only. You said you have an error? What does it say? Okay. The reason I didn't get that is because some of you, and it happened to several people this morning, it's asking for your Git credentials. So in order so that every time we push, it doesn't ask us to authenticate, here are the commands. I'll make it bigger so you can see. Hang on. Okay. If it's prompting you for credentials, you need to do two. The first one is git config -- global user.email and put in the email address you use for your GitHub account. You then do the same thing with user. Hang on, I have to see if it's username. Just the email? Okay. Yeah, or you can do user.name and put in your GitHub username. By adding that global flag, it should keep you from getting asked for the credential over and over again. It actually stores them in the Windows credential store when you do this. So try that and then you may need to do that before you can commit. Try that. Okay, you can't, I don't think you can do it in your root Windows. You're in your Windows directory. I don't think you can initialize Git in the Windows system directory. You need to do it in this folder.
The second time.
Hang on. What? Yeah. Okay, but so that's not okay. So you'll need to browse. I don't know why it's not taking you to the right folder. Let's go. Let's find the folder in Windows. So where's your project? Okay. All right. Grab that path. Copy. Do CD. Yeah. Change directory space, and now right click and paste. Yeah. Because of the drive, it's expecting a drive tab. Yeah. Maybe let's move this off of the desktop into the actual to a folder on C. Okay. So you have a full file path.
Mine just keeps like opens on it and popping up. The window wants to pop up. Any idea on what that would be? It does nothing. It does absolutely commit. It doesn't tell me. Like I got all the way to here. Yeah. I got the ad, and then look at it. I keep just hitting it. Nothing happens. I just get that.
You're using PowerShell. Maybe try the regular command prompt. I don't know if it's a PowerShell thing. Try it in a regular command prompt.
Okay.
So once we've run all these commands, our code should be uploaded. And notice, because I have the .git ignore, the packages folder got excluded. Right? So we don't have 112 megabytes of packages being pushed to GitHub. I know it might take some configuring for some people. Did that work with your credential?
Yeah.
Is your code in your repository now? If you refresh the repository, do you see the code or do you still see the instructions? It's there? Okay. Question at the back? Okay, sorry. I'm not sure what you're asking me. Okay. 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 If you don't have the project from last week, then what you can do is this. You can actually take my project off of GitHub because my code is here and you can download it. Okay. So to get to my project, again, inside of tools and resources, right? Here's my GitHub page. It's the second link. So open up my GitHub page. And if you click on repositories, it's the first one, right? Friday afternoon music store. So you can click on it. Now you have the option to clone or download it. I don't want you to clone it because if you clone it, your copy is still linked to my repository. And you don't want it linked to my repository. You want to put it in your own, right? So here's what you do. I'll go through the process. You download it. So download it as a zip file and save it somewhere on your computer. I'll put it here. Few people did this morning, but then they tried to open the project without unzipping it. First, you have to extract it. It's in a compressed file. So they said, my solution opened, but the projects won't load. It says project missing. And then we looked, and there were two people who were trying to open the compressed file. So go to the folder where you downloaded it and extract it. Okay. And now you can open up my solution from last week. But make sure you extract the zip file. Okay, you can't open it directly from the zip. Now, because the project was created on another computer, Visual Studio gives you this warning. Do you trust Rich's files? If you want my files, you got to say yes. Otherwise, it won't open. So I do the same. It gives me the same thing. If I download your projects and open them in my Visual Studio, I get the same warning. And it says ask for every project. Doesn't matter. There's only 2 projects. So just say, yes, I want to open the project. Now, there's going to be one thing missing. So here's the folder. Here's the version I just downloaded. So if you downloaded mine, your directory looks like this. What's missing from here? Yeah, why are the packages missing? Right, because we told Git to ignore them. So when I put my code on GitHub, the packages aren't there, which means it's easier for me to upload and easier for you to download, but you're not going to be able to run this project right now because we don't have the packages. So there's a fix for this. If you took my file, if you right-click the solution, right-click the solution, there's a restore packages. So that will look, there's a packages.config that lists all the packages and all the versions. So package restore will read that file and it will download all of the references from the NuGet repository. So we just click restore. Which I can't do because of the path I put it in. Is too many characters. I'll have to move this project to another folder or shorten my folder name before I can do it. So here, I'll just fix that quickly. I'll just move this up a level. Shorter file folder name, and then I can run package manager restore. So in here, we can see the packages.config. So this lists all of the references. And I'll just use package manager restore So it adds my packages back. And now I have my 112 megabytes back. So if you're going to take a Visual Studio solution from GitHub, you'll need to do package manager restore. Question? Okay, if your packages got uploaded on GitHub, then there's an problem with the Git Ignore file. So there's one of two potential problems. Either your file name is not called .git ignore, or that file is not in this folder beside your solution.
Even though I've changed the all files.
Okay. Yeah, so if it has the TXT extension, the Git Ignore is ignored. So setting our projects up through here is a bit of a process. Okay. Be with you in 1 second, Josh. We're going to do one more thing and then we'll take a break. Okay, so I've got my initial version of my project. I haven't made any changes. It's just the project we left off with last week. So here's the code. So let's add a Readme file, but we'll do it in Visual Studio, and then I'll show you how we can also push changes through Visual Studio. It's actually a fair bit simpler. Josh, I'll come see you in a minute, okay? So in my solution, right at the top, I'm going to click on my solution, right-click, and I'm going to choose Add New Item. And I just want the first option, which is a text file. I'm going to call README. What do we generally use the README files for? What's the purpose of them? Yeah, so we can document the code in the repository. Also helpful for you guys if you're out hunting for jobs and you're sharing your GitHub repositories with potential employers, the README file is going to tell them what each project's all about. So we can write HTML in here. So we'll just say this is the music store. You can say whatever you want here. Copy my text. In a job interview, someone wants to see some of your repositories, they can come here, at least they'll see this little README that'll tell them what this application is. Later on, when we deploy this to Azure, we'll actually include a link to the site as well. So they can click the link and actually see your music store running online. We'll do that maybe next week. So we've added a new file. So now our local copy is out of sync with our copy on GitHub, right? We have a README locally. We don't have this one online. So I could go back to the command line. I could add the file. I could commit and push, but I'm actually going to do it through Visual Studio with a few clicks. Now that I'm connected to my GitHub repository, this becomes easy. So if I go to this window called Team Explorer, if you don't see this little tab, it's available through View, Team Explorer. You can turn it on. And if I click on, there's a little home icon here. And now I can click on Changes. I went to Team Explorer, Home, and Changes. It might be. Do you see any pending changes in yours? Or pending changes. Okay, let me just look here for a sec. I'm not sure I'm looking at the right. Hang on. Wait a sec. This is why I don't like Visual Studio's Team Explorer. Like I said, when it works, it's great, but I've created the Readme file and it's not showing me anything. I'll refresh. Well, normally, as soon as we change something, Team Explorer, now that Git's added to this solution,
I guess it's at the right bottom. Where it's written add to source.
Yeah, because like it doesn't even connect to Git right now. Like it says add the source control.
Yeah.
It doesn't have a Git connected.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go. Like now you connect it.
it's interesting because, okay, let's see. Maybe you're right. Okay, thank you. So I had to click that. It was a little add to source control. It's interesting. I did this exact same thing this morning, never clicked that button. My changes showed up. But thank you, lad. Good suggestion.
How can I delete it? How can I like remove the Git from the Visual Studio? So like because like I connected my Git, like my Visual Studio project using the GitHub desktop.
Yep.
After, so like I could rename the repository in order to make the lab one.
Okay, right.
And now I want to rename the repository here, but I have no idea how to do it, and I want to delete this whole.
So you probably want to, remove the remote repository?
Yeah, like
Okay. I think the command for that is git remote remove -rm. That will disconnect it. Try that. Let me know if it doesn't work. I think that disconnects the remote repository. Okay. So now I click Team Explorer and changes. So I go to Home and Changes. And notice now it shows me that the README file is new. So I can just type in a commit message here, add README. And now on this dropdown, I have three options. I can make a commit, I can make a commit and push, or I can make a commit and sync. What do you think the difference is between sync and push? Yeah, you got it. Sorry, what's your name? Adrian. Okay, so Adrian's right. If we do a sync before it pushes, it will check the remote repository for any changes we don't have and download them. So this is helpful if Adrian and I are working together, right? Maybe I work in the morning, he works at night. So in the first thing in the morning, probably before I push changes, I want to do a sync in case Adrian's put more changes on GitHub that I don't have. In this case, I'm not working with anybody else, so it doesn't matter if I do sync or push. So I'll just do commit and push. And it's pushing it to GitHub. So if I refresh now, I've gone from 1 commit to 2. And our README file shows up. What version of Visual Studio do you use? Okay. I'll have to look at it. I haven't seen it before, so I'm not sure why. Now, you can also use the GitHub desktop client if you like. There's also a GitHub extension for Visual Studio, which I found is sort of buggy. Team Explorer tends to work better. So there's basically 4 different ways you can put your code on GitHub. Command line, Team Explorer, GitHub desktop, or GitHub extension for Visual Studio. Any one of them should work. The complicated part is really setting it up and connecting to your remote. Once we've connected, well, using Team Explorer is actually pretty easy. We just go to Team Explorer, changes, type a commit message, push, commit, and push. Okay, I expect some people are probably still having issues. It is 1 o'clock. We'll take a break for 10 minutes here.
It's just. I did not. Was it not working for you?